Welcome to the Glazier Nation podcast, where we uncover the best stories and the best practices of the glass and glazing industry. Whether you're a seasoned vet or just starting out your journey, this show's a great place for entertainment and a deeper understanding of our industry. I'm your host, John Spellman, and I'm truly honored to take you beyond the glass. Welcome back. This week, my guest is Timothy Patterson. Tim is a project manager for Sargent Glass Construction, but more importantly, Tim has a very long track record in the glass industry. From an apprentice to a project manager, through Washington State, Illinois, Denver, California, Tim's probably done it all. We talked about all that, but we also talked about a passion project of his called the Reset Project. I'll leave all those details for later in the show, but if you're into health, fitness, developing good habits, there's a lot of good stuff in this podcast. I had a blast chatting with Tim. Hope you enjoy the show. The Glazier Nation podcast is sponsored by Glazier Nation. You can check out all their offerings at glaziernation.com. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast or other marketing opportunities, go to glaziernation.com/marketing. And if you have questions for me or you know someone that would make a great guest for the show, you can contact us on any of our social medias at Glazier Nation Podcast. So you do your own podcast?
Yeah, I started a podcast back in beginning of March, I would say.
Okay.
It's called the Reset Project. And it's kind of like...
Write that down. Hang on. Reset Project. How many episodes?
5 episodes right now.
5 episodes. So you've already passed the first threshold.
Yep.
It's
on Spotify, YouTube.
Spotify, YouTube, Reset Project. Yeah, so people that start podcasts, 99% of them don't make it past episode 3.
Right.
And then of those people that make it past episode 3, 99% of them don't make it past, I want to say it was 21, 22.
Wow.
So you've passed the first threshold. I got bugs in here, man. I don't know what's going on this year in Florida. I don't know if you can relate to this. I think they're called Spanish flies. They're these green flies.
I know what they are. We get these, they're almost like gnats. They're like a fruit fly gnat.
Okay.
And they bite you.
Okay.
It's the weirdest thing, and mosquitoes, that's about it.
Yeah, I'm not going to have much sympathy on a non-Floridian talking about mosquitoes.
Right.
So they come, the worst we get them is, I'll take that back. There is a place my wife and I camped in Maryland called Assateague Island, and those mosquitoes were gnarly. What we get here, usually it's night baseball games, and it's like 7:05 on the dot. And you can't see our outfielders anymore. They're just clouds of mosquitoes.
Right. We get it because it's so wet, and like you guys, right? So it's the opposite. We're cold, wet. You're a warm, wet, and so we're surrounded by cedar trees, and they live in the cedar trees because cedar holds little bits of moisture, so they lay their eggs in all the cedar. So it's like all of a sudden it'll be first 80-degree day, and oh my God, it's bad. Okay,
all right. I'll concede a little bit here because my Western living was all Utah and Colorado, and I remember that the bugs there's no bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll concede to the Pacific Northwest. My experience with the Pacific Northwest was just some snowboarding, and to your comment about how wet it was, I just remember like the difference of Utah snow versus Pacific Northwest snow. It was like heavy, wet. My legs were dead.
Yep.
This is a glass podcast, though, so I do want to check out your podcast. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. But the Tim, I do. Anyone that tunes into this, there's a pre-recorded that I do an intro of you, so I'll kind of give a spiel of who you are, but I won't go through your whole journey. So that's kind of where I want to start. How did you start in the glass industry? And then, maybe give us a couple pit stops along the way to where you are now.
Yeah. So I started in the glass industry, at the age of 21. I've been in it now. It's just 23 years. My father's been in the industry for 50 years, so second generation.
Is he still working?
He is still working. So
That's awesome.
yeah, he's one of those guys that I don't ever think he'll leave. He loves the work and loves the trade. And it kind of it's in the family. My brother's a glazier, journeyman glazier, and we're just two sons in the family, me and my brother. I tried everything I could not to get into the glass industry. I just wanted to do my own thing. I tried concrete. I tried selling cars. I tried framing. If you name it, I tried it. And at the end of the day, here I was. I ended up getting my girlfriend at the time pregnant, and there wasn't a lot of work. And my dad said, show up at Walters and Wolf with, handed me 2 boots that he had. And drove up at 6 a.m. Monday morning, and I worked in the shop.
Yeah.
And just kind of started propelling myself forward in that environment, and really liked it. And it was just a natural feeling to flow into, and understanding the work, because just growing up into the business for so long. And, I was cutting glass on a table in my dad's garage when I was 12 years old. So a lot of the terminology and the things and basic blueprint reading was very easy for me at a young age. And it just was an easy opportunity for me to jump out into the field. And they just said, let's go, after a year in the shop, and sponsored my apprenticeship up in Seattle. And that was a neat experience. And at that time, my wife, who I had the daughters with, her family was back in Illinois, and she wanted to go back home. So we went back out east into Illinois, Chicago area, and jumped in the apprenticeship out there. But there wasn't a lot of work that's different out there than it is on the West Coast, because they're more just glass only install, to where glaziers on the West Coast do architectural metal and installation.
Okay, hang on. Let me bookmark you there, because I've never heard that. Is that the glaziers in the, I'll call that the Midwest. You're calling it the East. I get it based on your geography location. But who's installing the framing?
Ironworkers.
Okay.
So
was this split up because of union?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So you move there, and you're no longer doing the framing. You're just putting glass in the framing.
Right. So it was hard to find work at that time, because of that it was very little skill set. The ironworkers had most of that work for the union. So I made a decision because we were close to the border at the time. We were up in Gurnee, Illinois, which is right on the Wisconsin border. It was easy to call it Wisconsin. Now their union was different, where they touched both architectural metal and aluminum and installed the glass. So I was able to just switch my apprenticeship up there, and did a few years up there, and really liked it. And at that time,
when's this? Early 2000s?
Yeah, I would say 2003.
Okay,
2002, right. 2003, right in there. We ended up coming back to Seattle, my 4th year of apprenticeship, in 2004 to 2005, and I graduated in Seattle at Local 188. I worked there for a few more years out here, and ended up getting a divorce. Still continued to work for some glass shops out here, just accelerated my career, started to run some small jobs, and pick up momentum with just trying to educate myself as best I could with new technology that was coming into the trade. At that time, we were that was when the first cell phones come out, when it was the Google cell phones, and it was a touch screen at that time, before we had Nextels with walkie-talkie, click-to-talk. That was the highest technology back then. But, and just started running work and at that aspect. And then all of a sudden 2008 happened, right? 2009, and it just went.
Right.
Everybody lost their jobs. Companies closed the doors, and it was just a desert. And at that moment, I was dating my wife now, and we decided, well, we can go down to Southern California where my dad's at. They have a lot of public works projects. So the state of California was putting in a ton of money into public works. So it was libraries, hospitals, courthouses, and that was all prevailing wage work. Some of it was union, some of it was not, but it was all prevailing wage work. So I decided to put everything in a moving truck, head on down, And then we did that for a while. And my wife, we decided we were going to get married, but we were going to get married in Colorado, where she was from. Okay. And I just fell in love with Colorado. We went out there and got married in Colorado, and we ended up having 2 sons in Colorado, and just an absolutely gorgeous place. But like we all know, some of the wages are not the best in Colorado compared to, just a good living wage. And
sure.
So we just traveled. We went back to the West Coast, and I think it was the right time for me.
Real quick on your Colorado pit stop there. First of all, I can still remember the sound that the Nextel makes as you're walking around construction sites.
Beep, beep.
1999, 2001, whatever that was.
Yeah.
But Colorado, super small world. You and I both worked at Metro Glass at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't meet you. You were working field, right?
Yeah. So I started, went in the office. So we got married, and was looking for work. We were living up in Greeley, Colorado. Okay. And I went down to the Union Hall, and they said, hey, check out, they gave me a list of shops and said, hey, go check out. In the first place, well, they called Metropolitan, and the union rep at the time was friends with Ron Smith out there.
Oh, yeah.
So he just said, hey, I got this guy. I'm going to send him your way. Just going to give him a heads up. So he said, go there first. So I went there first, and Ronnie said, hey, come on into the office. We sat down. He drilled me on my short little resume that I had. And he said, all right, well, I'll put you to work. And so that was the end of the story. I started working there and met some really great people and just kind of hustled like I do and put my nose to the grindstone and just get after it. And next thing you know, they said, hey, we want you to run work, and here's a job for you. I said, wow, okay, cool. And we did one job, and it was really successful. And then they said, well, at the time they had DeVita World Headquarters go out. It was a really big job for Metro.
Yeah.
So they were like, hey, we'd like you to be a general foreman up on the top of the tower where all the Old Castle curtain wall was stacking on top of the other curtain wall. So
yeah,
I said, okay, let's go do it. And did that and just continued to grow at Metropolitan. But it was very, very difficult financially for us because we didn't make a lot of money. We had young kids.
Sure.
It was just tough. We love it. I'd go back today if I could. So, but it was just a very tough situation, and it was a great company. I love Metro. I was able to grow a lot at that company, and I was able to help them develop their structural sealant line when we had Wausau windows coming for, God, what was the name of that? Oh, that was the Kaiser Permanente.
Yeah.
We had those really long units that came in. I helped them develop that whole system and help them do that because they had never done that before. When I worked my first year at Walters of Wolf, that's all we did. We shot all the units, right? That was just 101 to me. So I told them how to prime the pump and all that stuff and how to set the machinery up. And it was a fun experience there.
So I started there, and I was only there about 19 months, but I started there right about at the end of that DeVita project.
Okay.
And I was 19 months. I was just working as an estimator. Shout out to Sean Moore. I learned a ton from Sean Moore. I did a podcast prior to Glazier Nation podcast called Glazing Guru, and I had Sean on as a guest.
Okay.
Real good guy. Learned a ton there. Good company. You left Colorado, went back to California, but now you're back up in Seattle, right?
Yep. I went to California. I'm from Colorado. Worked for AGA, and just what an amazing company. Worked in Southern California for them, helped them out with some specialty projects, kind of became their door guy, ran around to all their projects, fixing a bunch of doors and helping them with just their whole door program. It was actually really cool. And
sure,
we kind of wanted to be close. And Joe Marinelli, that was the superintendent down there at the time, really great friend of mine now, and we wanted to be closer to my daughters, which were growing up in Seattle. And I says, hey, they got a lot of work in San Francisco. That's halfway the distance, right? We can get closer. So they said, hey, we want to send you up to San Fran. And so we went up to San Fran, and I worked on the International Control Tower, Terminal 2. So all the cab glass that goes up there, I don't know if you've ever seen that. It is really cool looking, looks like a tornado as it comes up, right? So we put all the cab glass in that and did some other projects up in downtown San Francisco. And then there was an opportunity for me that just called up out of nowhere, out of the blue, that said, "Hey, we could take you back up in Washington, and it's getting really busy up here." And my wife and I discussed at the time. I says, "Hey, should we do this? Should we get back up and be with my daughters, and just try to co-parent as best as possible?" So we made that decision, and it worked out to where we got my daughters to graduate, and they're successful out of the real world. And
so what's that like, man? That's like 20 years, and you go Washington, Illinois, California, Colorado, California. That's a lot of jumping around. I mean, are you like, take me through that? Are you renting? Is it kind of nomadic? Like how?
Yeah, so we rented. In Colorado, my wife had some family, so when we first got there, we stayed with family for a little bit to get settled, and we were able to rent a couple houses out there. Rent an apartment at first, and then we moved into a house, and just kind of moved. Yeah, the best thing to do would be get into an apartment, right? And we live in an apartment.
I suppose that's not entirely ignorant. That's more kind of just, I don't know, maybe trying to live vicariously a little, because my wife and I, we had a long running joke, and we kind of beat it into the ground, and we no longer use it. But prior to moving to Florida, neither of us had lived anywhere longer than 2 years, since we graduated high school. Now we've been in Florida almost 10 years. So it's kind of taking me back to that moving here, moving there. But we planted roots here, man, and it'd be hard to uproot those roots right now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're probably getting into that now back in Seattle.
It is. It's tough because it's like, I don't think Seattle was ever like the destination we really wanted to be. I mean, most people go, "I love the rain. I hate the rain." Nobody wants to work in the rain. But we've been here now. We've been in this house since 2016. So we've been here for a minute. We have our oldest son now, getting ready to graduate this summer, next month. So yeah, I mean, it's worked out.
Cool.
Now, it hasn't been the funnest ride, with
Sure.
Work comes and goes, right? It ebbs and flows, and I've always followed the work. And sometimes when you have to just put roots into the ground and do what's right with the family, you got to do some things a little differently. So,
well, going through that, and helping with the sealant line and the knowledge of doors, which, by the way, knowledge of doors right now is like that's a gem right there, dude. There's a lot of issues with doors. I'm not good at doors. I know the basics to get by, but when you start getting into what hardware works with what and what EPT works with what panic, I start to sweat a little. But my point is, your skill set now, with all those years of experience and all those specialty items, I mean, you should be able to kind of pick and choose where you want to be.
Yeah, it's beneficial. I never did any college. I never got a construction management degree or any kind of engineering degree. I've always just worked my way up, keep my mouth shut, listen, and be the first person to volunteer for every task, right? Because that's what's going to get you the most opportunity. When the foreman says, "I need 2 guys to go do this," you always got to be the guy that's going, "I'm going to do it," right? Yeah. Even if I don't know how to do it, I'm going to learn how to do it. And when you're wrong, own it. That's it. You're going to move up, period.
No, I think that's great. I went to college. I believe that my college education has helped me. Mm-hmm. Is it the correct return on investment? I'm not sure. Would I have been okay without it? Probably. Would I be doing something different? Maybe. You can't really dwell on that, but I'm kind of the mindset that college is not a requirement. It is not for everybody. My kids are going to have to really convince me why they want to go to college, if they want to go to college. I mean, it's going to have to be, I'm going for this so I can do this. Like, it's going to have to, my kids will not just go to college because it's 13th grade. They will have to go for a reason. So I don't know. I think college is a thing. I don't think it's what it was, right? Maybe when my parents were college age. It's not quite the same. It's not the maybe it was harder to get into, or it was more exclusive, or it meant more, or it was more for that specific item. Now it's kind of just, I don't know. I think people found out they can make a lot of money with colleges, and they went that route.
Right. I agree. I think that nowadays a lot of employers, they'll look at college and, okay, you showed up for 4 years. What you learn there doesn't apply to the job you're applying for. They just are taking your college because you showed up for 4 years. Well, let me tell you something. If you did an apprenticeship, you showed up for 4 years.
Yeah.
And you fed your family. And you worked full time. Right? So that should have merit too. And that should have ownership. So these owners of glass companies and construction companies, they should be taking that in consideration to the people that really want to move up and give those opportunities, because those guys who went through that showed up for 4 years.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of employers, whether it's glass or construction or something else, not necessarily devaluing the degree, but looking at other ways to hire people, whether it's they're going to pass a test, or they're going to do training, or whatever. It's, maybe when you were applying for jobs before, it was requirement, a bachelor's degree. And I think people are kind of getting away from that. At least in my opinion, more creative employers are getting away from that.
Right. I think the best education you can get is in the field, on the job training. Yeah. And even glass companies, when they hire somebody new, that's fresh out of college, they don't know anything about the industry. So they have to be trained one way or the other or not. Now, where we're missing as the field, where we have glaziers, is we're not keeping up with the technology in the field. We're not training the field guys with the same technology and the same advancements that we train the in-office guys with, right? You can't sit a glazier foreman down and set him in front of Bluebeam because he's never touched it before.
Right.
But a project engineer who comes out of college, he's got Bluebeam, Microsoft Project, he's got the whole 9 yards on his computer, and he gets to run through that. So we're not leveling out for both sides. It's the technology it's climbing faster for the in-office people than it is for the in-field people. We're still dealing with tablets now that, it's great if you can teach them how to do plane grid. I know a lot of guys that still struggle on their cell phones and look at prints. I mean, we have to bridge that gap.
So, I take that as we need to do more training with our field guys. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Whether that's unions or non-unions, it goes across the board. Like the unions just as guilty. They don't do the training in the apprenticeship programs for these students. Like, I know so many things in my day-to-day career, like as a project manager now, we have all different types of systems that we'd be familiar with, whether it's Procore, plane grid, all different types of pay applications. I mean, and that is in the project management world, but in the field, all of the punch lists are coming off Procore or plane grid or new systems, right? Adobe just bought all of plane grid, and they're changing up a whole bunch of stuff. So there's whole different platforms. We need to be able to train these guys how to use the technology in the field so we can be more successful in the field. It can't rely on just the office people anymore. And I was lucky when I went to work for Harman. Harman was very, very influential with training the field guys all the way down to the just labor workers, right? And we didn't have a problem training how do people use the tablet if they were just on a punch list crew, because they can mark that stuff off, right? And they can learn how to read the drawings. The more educated people that we have, the easier it's going to be for us, and we're not going to have risk in the field because they're going to know how to install the stuff. They're going to know how to install the curtain wall or the unitized system or the anchors.
So I've talked with a lot of people in our industry, right? This is episode 34 of this specific podcast, let alone my daily day-to-day routine stuff. Everybody would say more training is required. I've never heard the take that you just gave, though, right? Like, it's always about, it's not about, it's some of it's about the tech, but it's more like about tools and that kind of
Mm-hmm.
tech.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about, I think, is super important. It's a great point, right? Like, I feel that we are headed in the direction as people, like, not to get all tinfoil hat and stuff, but like we're all cyborgs, right? We all your phone may not be inside you, but it is within your arm's reach at all times. And when you have that, you are a cyborg. You can look up information, blah, blah, blah. But the installer can also use that for a lot of important things that you're kind of laying out, installation instructions, shop drawings, anchor patterns, right? Like, being able to access that. Yeah, you're right. That's probably a bit of a missing gap. And the faster we improve that technology, right? You're talking about Adobe changing things, and I've talked ad nauseum on this podcast about smart documents and being able to embed information in documents in real time and the BIM model and all this. The more the installer can get involved in that, I mean, name your price, Mr. Installer, right?
Think about what you said with BIM. And if you could train just even your top field guys, I've had the experience where I've shown my foremen that were underneath me BIM models, and their minds were blown away.
Sure.
I'm like, I can take this model and I can dissect the curtain wall. I can take that panel out. I can look at that anchor. I can look at the insulation. I can look at everything. And they go, that's how I see it. It's 3D. And they go, oh, that's how we install it. Drawings are 2D, and they're not always as clear as we know as we design them, right? And we're just handing that off to a field guy and say, hey, go put that in. If we can get them involved, and technology's out there, for crying out loud. I mean, you have VR headsets that work with the BIM. This takes half an hour. If you can come into the office and get these guys loaded up, and they say, hey, I want to look at this, put the VR headset in, go into the BIM model, and go, okay, the superintendent or the foreman of the project, and he can dissect that section. Done. I mean, there could be waterproofing details that you can't see. Sometimes you see it on the drawings, but you can't visually see it until you actually get to see the whole model, the whole
that's
intent.
Like a 2D shop drawing or 2D manufacturer's installation instructions, right? Like, it's helpful, but you're kind of looking at IKEA instructions, right?
Right. And you look at
as opposed to, like, if you bought that IKEA set and you watched like a really good, well-made YouTube video instead of the instructions, that you could see, like you said, we're turning it, we're moving it. How does this go together? That's huge. That's the missing gap right there. And you made the point. Maybe not every guy gets trained in that, but your head guy, to be able to see how those systems go together, be able to kind of look at those plans in real time on the job site, and not damp paper with coffee stains on it on some table in the middle of the job site.
Right. The wind's blowing your prints all the way down, or the rain's blowing in on the side. And
so, yeah, it's just, it's just one of those things. 'Cause, the question is, well, how do we do it? And it's like, well, employers, unions, manufacturers, they need to get on board. And this industry is so slow moving in terms of tech.
Yeah.
We're super fast in terms of construction schedules, but technology adoption. There might still be some guys with those Nextels we talked about out there.
There might be, and I think the bigger companies, obviously the Harmons, the Encloses, Crown Course, and all of the big companies, they see that. There's people that are seeing that vision as well, and they're trying to train their guys. But that doesn't encompass the rest of the country and the glass companies that are out there, hundreds of thousands of glass companies, right? And not everybody uses a BIM model, but they could use an isometric detail a little better and understand that, right? Like, you see an isometric detail and it's just black and white. Well, why don't you color it with a sequence of construction, right? And then the guy goes, oh, I know that this goes first and this other trade goes first, and now I come in here. Okay, and now I understand it. We have it. We have the technology. We're not using it. We just need to do that. And think about safety and that was kind of something I've been thinking about a lot more, is how do you use the technology in safety? So now you look at a BIM model where you say you're doing a 30-story high rise, and you can look at all of those areas of, okay, how do we plan for, traffic down below here? Or how do we plan for fall protection here when somebody's going to be doing this down below?
Yeah.
Let's think about how we can build this building safer before it gets up out of the ground. Do we need to put attachments for life safety in different areas that we didn't see before? It could save cost, and it saves a lot of time, and it gets people thinking faster and ahead of the schedule.
And I have a hunch that there's some high quality CMs and GCs that might be working in that space a little, but when you get down to the glazing contractor, there's probably a handful in the United States that are working at that at any level. Hey, the podcast Reset Project. So you and I talked briefly offline, and I think the signs behind you go with it. The Reset Project, that's what you did, right? You reset.
Yeah, and I'm resetting every day. So it's a passion project of mine. That kind of started with, some bad decisions on my end within the industry, just being stressed out, right? And working long hours, 10, 12-hour days, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. And like a lot of glazers, we'll come home, we'll drink a little too much, we'll eat a little too much. We're not getting to the gym, we're not exercising because we're exhausted.
Sure.
Right? You do that for 5 years in a row, and you could be in a really bad situation. So that's where I was at. And I had just got myself where my health wasn't the greatest. I was focusing more on my career and not so much on myself.
I think that's broader than just glazers too. Like anyone working out in the field, for sure. But anyone can just get into that grind and get out of that health set.
Absolutely, 100%. And it's for all aspects, whether you work in an office for an accountant or anything, right? And we can lose focus. We are, as America and Americans, losing focus of our health, right?
So how did you get it? How did you bring it back? How did you reset?
So I ended up getting really sick. I went on an antelope hunt in Wyoming with the family, and I ended up getting pneumonia out there, higher elevation, some dust, and I got a lung infection. And when I got back home, I just was really, really sick. And my wife's like, we got to go to the hospital. And I fought it. And I, kind of that grumpy construction guy. Oh, I don't need to go in there, and I wasn't breathing at some points. Just I wasn't taking in enough oxygen. And she drugged me to the hospital at midnight, and there, lo and behold, I was admitted for 8 days. I got myself to where I had a little bit of heart failure. They said, I was diabetic at that point. I had blood O2 levels at like 56, which is like, you're pretty much dead anyways. But we got it corrected, right? And I had a really good doctor. Before, I really didn't have good doctors, and I didn't seek good medical care. We'd go to the doctor when we needed to stitch because we cut ourselves, or, twisted my shoulder lifting glass, and I'll be better the next day, and doesn't get better. That's why I go to the doctor for it. And they say, okay, you don't go in for medical care. That's
typical man stuff, and it's probably just 10, 50, 100 times worse in the construction industry, right? Tough dudes.
Yep.
That's typical dude stuff, right? So doctor gets you on a program, doctor gives you advice.
He says, you got a chance. You got a second chance. You have this second chance right now. If you continue on the path you go, you don't have a good opportunity to live much longer than, a few more years. If you do what you need to do, you lose weight, you get healthier, you have a chance. So I took it upon myself. You get a little time to think at 8 days in a hospital, seeing your wife and your kids and the position that you put them in. It hits you, right? It hits you differently. It just hit me, and I said, I don't ever want to do that again. How am I going to correct this? And it took me a second, right? It took me a couple of months to get out of the hospital, to really lose bad habits and figure things out. But I just had a crazy turn of events, and I started to lose weight. I got put on Ozempic because I was on diabetes, and I lost a little bit of weight. but it was not much. And I knew I needed to do something different. So the new gym opened up down the road, Planet Fitness. And I jumped down in Planet Fitness and I went out there and went after it the very first day. And I worked out really hard and I came home and threw up in my driveway. And I was so disgusted with myself, right? And it was like that really hit me because I let myself go. Like I did it, but I let myself go so bad. And I was like, man, I used to do all kinds of things and I could lift and climb stairs. I can run up the tower. And now look at me, you know, and it mentally got to me. So I just started working out and I started working out and going. I took a little sabbatical, just to focus on myself because I knew that I needed to build me back. I needed to get myself back to where I needed to be so I could provide for my family and give an employer, whoever that be, the best that they're paying for it, right? That's me. I want to give them the best. So to do that, I got to build me first. So I went, I hooked up with some really great friends of mine that started a business called Punch APS. And they offered me an opportunity to kind of work from home and do into a sales role, a sales pre-construction role to get their company off the ground. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. This gives me an opportunity. I can still work from home. I can hit the gym. I can do all these things. Yeah. It was a great opportunity, right? So we took a business trip down to San Francisco to go meet with AGA and some other clients out there that I had set up. And we're driving to one of the locations. I think it was AGA. And one of the guys puts on a podcast in the car, and it was Andy Frisella's Real AF. And that message that he said just hit me. Like it was just really a catalyst to what I was already doing and in the starting of the working out. And I couldn't stop thinking about that podcast. You hear that one message, whatever that message be, and it resonates with you for your situation.
Yeah. What was it?
I don't even remember the episode, but it was it was just a butt kicking message, right? And
okay.
Better yourself and quit being a POS, right? Type message, right? And so I thought to myself, I got home and I asked them, what was that podcast? Because I didn't even remember what it was. And they said, it was Andy Frisella's Real AF. So I got on my Spotify, put it on my headphones, and I just rolled back to episode 1, right? There's 700 episodes now, but I just hit play. And I work out every day, sometimes twice a day, listening to that podcast and just going. This
is a current podcast.
Yes, it is. And
I have a feeling I've probably seen clips of this dude. I don't know him by name, but it sounds like the David Goggins. That
he's the number one podcast for. I don't know if it's entrepreneur.
Okay, I
don't remember what it is, but he's number 1 rated.
Sure. Okay.
He owns First Form supplements.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So
I have a feeling I'll look it up and I'll immediately go, oh, that guy. Like I've probably seen. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it was just kind of like a life changer for me. Just the messages that he was able to get out, and so I just fed off of that, right? And he created the 75 Hard program.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I decided January 1st. My wife and I took a trip down to Oregon to visit some family right before New Year's, and we were coming back and we were listening to the podcast on the way home while the kids were sleeping. And she's like, I don't know, something clicked with her and resonated with her. And she says the next morning we wake up, she's like, we're doing 75 hard. I'm like, I wasn't planning on doing 75 hard, but okay. You challenge accepted, right? And so January 1st, I was like, I need to just take this momentum that I've got, this feeling of
let's in case someone doesn't know what that is, it's 2 workouts a day, right? One of them is outdoors.
Yep, 2 workouts a day, 1 outdoors.
Like reading, go ahead.
1 indoors. You read 10 pages of nonfiction book, so self-help, self-development book. Drink 1 gallon of water, and take a picture of yourself every day. It doesn't have to be shared or anything like that. It's for you only. And there's actually an app. There's a couple apps out there, but he has an official app. You pay like $6 and it lists it out, the whole calendar, 75 days. But yeah, both workouts have to be 45 minutes each, and 1 has to be outdoors, not in your garage with the garage open, outdoors in the element.
Sure.
And it's not a program for weight loss. It's a mental program. It is. I did 43 days, and I failed because I got the stomach flu.
Okay.
I just couldn't make that other workout out I was just wiped, right? And I just
75 is a long way. So I've been pretty dedicated to fitness for 18 years now. And 75 days, it doesn't sound like a lot, but you get sick, you go on a vacation, you strain a muscle, any of those outcomes, you're not only just going to miss a day, but you might miss a week. And actually the struggle I have now at age 42 that has gotten worse is the restart. So I like the name of your podcast. So like what'll happen to me is the kids are sick for a week, and then I'm sick for a week, and that's like 2 weeks of very limited gym activity. Those 2 weeks by itself, if that's all it was, would not be that big of a deal. But hopping back on and getting started again is something I've been struggling with the last, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 months.
Yeah, and it's a commitment to yourself, and it's a struggle. I still deal with that struggle every single day.
So I didn't want to hijack your story, but I did want to relate on you failing at 43 days, because that's still good. 43 days is still good, but
right.
I just wanted to make it clear that 75 days is a long time to go. How far did your wife go?
She didn't get it that far. I think she made 11 days and she got COVID. And
see,
he got COVID, and she was the only one in the house to get COVID during that time. And, we're both very competitive by nature, and I gave her a hard time. And then of course that was my karma, right? Right. 43 days. But after that 43 days, I already had enough of the habits built in, right?
Right.
I had that system built in my head, and things were already changing. The mental attitude, the dynamics of, you stop putting up with people's crap. You push yourself farther because you know you can do things that other people aren't. You see things in a whole different light. It really is a mental change. It's a mental program. And I decided to do it, jump on it again here recently. I did 21 days, and then my grandfather passed. So I just took the time to focus on the family and go help the family out. But I'll be back onto it. After when I left for to help my family and doing it another 21 days, to me it was like, this is easy now. Now this is just marking the calendar, because if I can take these same tools that I've learned with this program and implement those every single day, okay, cool. If I fail, I already know I can get back on it, so I do it. And you just rotate it, right? And it's okay to like fail. It's okay to learn from that, right?
Yeah.
You can't always be 100% successful. That program only goes 75 days. Now there is the Live Hard program that has different challenges throughout the year. But that's 75 days. After 75 days, you have the choice, right? And at that point, you make those choices to eat better, push yourself harder, work out, do all of those things. And if you want to take a vacation, take a vacation. But it's you. You're only answering to you.
Well, you hit the nail on the head in the creating the habit, right? Anytime anyone has ever asked me for advice or what program should I do or what should I do, I say, if you haven't done anything, just start taking a 10-minute walk every day.
Absolutely.
Just find a really soft landing spot of something easy to do, but make sure you do it every single day. You'll develop the habit. You'll eventually get bored with a 10-minute walk, and you'll add something else, right? You'll do something else. You'll YouTube, what else can I do, right? It's just developing that habit and making it a part of your day no matter what.
Absolutely. I think what was the most exciting point is creating the Reset Project and this compassion that I felt, because I was like, if I can do this, so many people can. And I had, gained about 12,000 followers on Facebook. So I had people already reaching out to me saying, what are you doing? How are you getting this success? Just helping people in the DMs. Right. And I thought, I felt this calling by God to go, let's get something out to help people. Right. I'm not going to charge people to give information that I'm doing myself. Right. If monetary things were to ever happen, it would be by nature that would come through it. but I'm
So
not going to charge them.
what is the reset like? What are you doing? But besides helping people answering questions, is there like a program you've created, or like what are you doing? What is the reset project?
I'm working on creating some programs. I'm looking at a couple different things. I don't really want to say yet, but I've got a couple things. But so far, I wanted to see how the dynamic of the Facebook group would grow. So I created the Facebook group January 1st when I started 75 Hard. And now we're at 770 members in the Facebook group. Cool. And all of that's organic people that just want to reset, right? And we've had all kinds of walks of life come in, from alcoholics to recovering alcoholics to people that have lost their job and lost their families. And it's not only just, fitness. It's about you, right?
Yeah.
It's about here. The mental
that goes a really long way. It's funny. This was more with my 6-year-old boys team, so 6U baseball. The older boy, we tried to focus on the same thing, but we just did it differently. But with the younger boys, I told them that the little hat on their baseball bat, the little knob at the top, right? The little pin, whatever you want to call it, that's the reset button.
Yeah.
So whether you're in the glass industry, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a 6-year-old playing baseball, with the younger kids, you can see it, when something bad happens and how hard it is for them to move on, right? So that's why we did the reset button. But to your point, alcoholics, anyone looking to restart, I think that's a great thing you're doing. I think that's a great place to start, a community where you can talk to people. But yeah, just super important to, if you want to do that and follow through, right? And start creating those habits.
And a lot of people just don't know the tools, the basic free tools out there, and I didn't. So I learned, and I was like, well, if I learned this, and I felt so ignorant for so long, like I didn't know what macros were. I've heard people talk about macro-based diets, and I never knew what macros were until October of last year. Okay, great. Now I know how to set up a macro-based diet for my goals of what I want to do. And so I help people set up their macros. And people go, oh, well, I'm working out, but I'm not losing any weight. Well, what are you eating? What are we taking in? And changing that, doing the tweaks. And when people see results, that's what's cool. It's like building a building, right? When we start from the very bottom and we get up to the top and we put that glass and we go, yeah, I did that. When I help people get healthier, I was like, yeah, that's awesome. That's a great feeling that they get to, and they're going to share that. This is a contagious thing. When you get better and you mentally get better and you physically get better, it's contagious. You walk into a room and everybody sees you. They want to know how you did it. You walk within energy, right? I believe in a lot of positive energy. It's with anything in the world, right? There's polar opposites and there's positive. And I like the positive. You bring positive energy to your life, you're going to get more positive in return, right? And so you got to get yourself better. You got to get yourself you got to work out, get physically. You don't have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, but you have to be able, if you can't take care of yourself, what does an employer think? How are you going to take care of that company? How are you going to take care of their assets if you can't take care of yourself first?
Yeah.
That's how
I mean, I'd be lying if sometimes you see people and they're obviously not taking care of themselves, and you kind of question like what's that person going to do in this role, or how's that person going to handle this situation, right? And some people will surprise you, I guess, but the point is that people are going to have those preconceived notions, right? But if you're what you're saying, if you bring that positive energy, they're going to have a preconceived notion about that, and then and then it's kind of what you're talking about, this circle of life thing, right?
Yeah, and if you lose the weight or whatever it is, right, you reset yourself. You have the opportunity to help somebody else, because once you've cleared your mind of whatever you were dealing with, and you've gained that information, you naturally, as human instinct, you want to share that with people. So you don't have to have a website. You don't have to have a Facebook group to go up to somebody else you see in an office or the job site that might be struggling and be like, hey, man, I recently tried switching some things up, and maybe check this out, or this app I'm using, right? And if you share that little bit of knowledge and they use that and they get healthier, you're winning. And we as a society are kicking butt.
I think it's important to add too, right? Like I don't want to sound cruel, right? It's not be this level of fitness. You know, you related it to Arnold. It's not be this particular weight or body fat percentage. It's dude, do a 10-minute walk. Like I said, just start taking control, right? Just baby steps to take control of your health. You only have one body. You only have one life, right?
Yep. And I think a lot of it too is, you know, taking those walks and doing those steps. I've gotten closer to my family.
Yeah.
I do more stuff with the kids, and, you know, I make time to do that. Because obviously I want my health to be better, but I want to go play baseball with my youngest son. It's just in love with baseball. So as soon as I get in the door, he's got the mitts and he's ready to go. Well, great. I get to kill two birds with one stone. Like, we'll do some speedball. We'll run around the field, and I'll burn calories, and I'm engaging with my son.
Yeah.
I'm engaging with my family. Go on a walk with your wife or your husband, right? And do those things like you're saying, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. You're mentally reconnecting to the family, and you're getting better, and you're leading by example. Because if you say, hey, let's go for a walk, let's go do this, let's go toss the football. You're a leader, you're running. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be, I talk about the Reset Project, you don't have to be a husband. You can be a wife and be the leader of your family. There's a lot of great single mothers out there. And we just, as a society, are so busy with work and trying to make ends meet. It's tough out there. Take 10 minutes, like you said, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Involve everybody around you, lead by example. You know, it's one thing if you're on a diet, but if your kids aren't eating healthy, like, how are you leading?
Yeah.
We're
my wife and I are pretty, and that was one of the big benefits of setting up the garage gym, right? Is the kids see us using it. The kids see us. It doesn't matter what we're lifting. Again, it doesn't matter what we're doing. It doesn't matter how many box jumps we do. What matters is that they see us developing good habits.
Yep.
And the same with the food. Like, listen, there's Oreos in my pantry. My kids eat some junk food here and there, but they know that we try to eat real food that comes from the earth, whether it's an animal, a plant, a fruit. Like, that's where we start developing good habits.
Yeah, it all starts with education, and we're lacking that. And the schools aren't going to do it for us. We have to do it.
That was a common theme of this discussion, Tim. Is our Glazers, our field guys, are not getting the proper education. A normal American is not getting the proper education on their diet, on their health. Hey, I want to ask you one more glass question, and you can answer this as short, as long as you want. I'll get you out of here. If you could change one thing about our industry, what would you change and why?
That's a good question. I think it goes back to the topic of just education, like we were talking about electronic or the digital aspect of it. I think it's education. I would change the education. I think we're falling behind. And as much as we like to pride ourselves as like, we're doing this and we're doing that, and we look at other trades, like the MEP trades, they're so much more farther advanced in the field to the office. And it doesn't mean it's different with union or non-union. We need to catch up with those other trades because the technology is out there and we have the ability to use that. We just have to find a way. We make excuses. Oh, it's too expensive, or it's not in the budget this month. Well, if we educate somebody in the proper way to use these tools, will it save us money to where we have more money in the budget? Three times as much money in the budget to do this stuff? So I think that's where we need to be. If we need to change something, I think we need to jump in with technology and see what the other trades are doing. We need to involve ourselves with the other trades and, like, what are you doing? You know, the electricians, the MEP trades, and all the different people around you. Like, how can we take what they're doing and their successes and use that and look at their failures and where they've gone wrong and what hasn't worked, right? Because we have an opportunity as not the scapegoats and leaders, but we can have an opportunity to learn from them and build up.
Well said, man. Tim, greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You have a good night, man.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.